Good day, Team Telco. This is a training specifically targeted at the HR department or the talent team and managers about the time and attendance SOP. SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure. And this is designed to help you to implement and enforce the time and attendance policy, which is in the knowledge base. So the training objectives are, number one, to understand the daily monitoring procedures around time and attendance as they apply to HR officers and managers, to learn the occurrence tracking system, to master the leave application process, and to implement accountability measures. Some of the key topics that we'll cover is the daily check-in process, the UDU 18 system navigation, occurrence tracking and badges, and what are the specific responsibilities of managers. This is version 2 of this SOP with an effective date of the 28th of May 2025, prepared by myself, Dumisani Nomakukunkala. So let's start off with some of the critical daily timelines that we need to observe. These are the time-sensitive requirements that must be met. So before 8 a.m., any employee absence must be notified, and this is the responsibility of the employee themselves, who must notify the HR department and their manager, and the manager must notify HR as soon as they become aware of any absence by any employee. Between 8 and 8:15 a.m., the daily attendance and check-in completion must be done, which means that every single employee has the responsibility to check in to the system using the procedures that have been notified before in the attendance module. The HR officer is responsible to check that all attendances have been registered for the day. At 8:30 a.m., any manager notifications of known absences must be passed on to the HR department, who will collate and collect all the known absences for their 9:30 report. At 9:30 a.m., a daily report will be generated and shared with MANCO and EXCO by the HR team. By 6 p.m. daily, the manager must have validated all timesheets and submitted them, and this is the responsibility of all department heads and supervisors. All of these things have a consequence if they are missed. We have a consequence of one occurrence if an employee doesn't notify before the start time. There's an occurrence of one occurrence once again if the daily attendance is not completed. The manager also incurs one occurrence if they do not notify HR and EXCO of any employee absences. There's an occurrence of one if HR does not produce the daily report by 9:30 a.m. And there's also an occurrence of one where department heads do not do their team timesheet validation. It's critical to note that there's no discretion allowed in any of these things for managers or for HR. Only EXCO can approve exceptions, and this is because HR is responsible overall for the implementation of this policy and these processes. So let's talk a little bit about the occurrence tracking system. Basically, an occurrence is an infraction of an aspect of the policy. And so there are what we call high impact occurrences. These attract one whole occurrence. These are things like unauthorized absences, manager timesheet failure, manager absence notification failure, HR inaccurate reporting, and HR late daily reporting, as well as medical certificate failures. There are other kinds of occurrences that attract half an occurrence, and these are things like late arrival, early departures, missing clock-ins, missing clock-outs, and incomplete timesheets. And there are some escalation thresholds where if 2 or more occurrences happen in a 30-day period, in other words, 2 whole occurrences happen in a 30-day period, disciplinary action is required. If 8 occurrences happen in a 12-month time frame, these are grounds for termination. And if we have 5 or more days of absence without notification, this is what's called job abandonment, and it immediately results in termination of the contract. It's also worth to note that 2 half occurrences make up 1 whole occurrence in this policy. So let's just quickly run through the different leave types and their requirements. We have annual leave. It's an entitlement which is enshrined in the law, 30 days per year. Maximum accrual of this is maximum of 45 or 90 days. And this must always be applied for in advance, either 1 week, 5 days or more in advance for less than 1 week, for less than 5 days, and 1 month in advance for 5 days or more. This does not require a medical certificate, and it does require, all of these leaves require director approval, EXCO member approval. There's something called compassionate leave, for which there's an allocation of 12 days a year. And when the circumstances that support compassionate leave arise, these should be notified as soon as possible. No medical certificate is required. There's sick leave, and this must be notified before 8 a.m. on the first day when the sickness is registered. There's maternity leave, which is required advance notice for at least 3 months in advance. There's paternity leave, which requires at least a month in advance of the birth. And then there's unpaid leave, for which there is a requirement or as required. So for all of these leaves, there is a specific leave policy, and it is best that you acquaint yourself with the leave policy. So what are a manager's daily critical responsibilities as regards time and attendance? First of all, managers are responsible for daily timesheet validation. That means that they must review and approve daily timesheets by 6 p.m. every day. They also have a responsibility to do absence notification. This is to notify HR of known absences by their department by 8:30 a.m. every day. They also have a responsibility for leave application review. And they must process those applications within 24 hours of those applications being raised. And then finally, they have a responsibility for KPI alignment, which is to verify the timesheet entries against the departmental KPIs. A manager's accountability or failure to validate timesheets or notify HR of an absence or failure to do any of these critical daily responsibility will result in 1 whole occurrence with no discretion allowed. Only EXCO can approve exceptions. The best practice is to maintain daily communication with team members and proactively address attendance issues before they escalate. So what are HR's daily procedures? What is HR responsible for? So HR is responsible for a number of things: ensuring that everyone can log into Udo, helping people to navigate attendance, filtering the current day's report, reviewing the summaries, checking missing clock-ins, reviewing previous day's clock-outs, navigating to timesheets, reviewing entries that have been validated, and then generating reports. So HR's procedures are really about comprehensive verification. So HR is about verifying that what all the departments and what all the teams have done is being done in accordance with the policy. And they then must generate a daily report which helps us to track our productivity on a daily basis. And that productivity starts with people basically being at work. So time and attendance, productivity starts with time and attendance. So what's the absence notification process? If someone is absent, what should they be doing in order to notify around their absence? And this is critical in terms of timing for all stakeholders involved. So 8 a.m. is the standard working time start, unless you're working on a shift, in which case your shift start time will be the equivalent of the 8 a.m. start time. So employees must notify supervisors before 8 a.m. of any absence that they may encounter. The manager must notify HR by 8:30 of any absences that they've noted or been notified of, and HR must report to MANCO and EXCO by 9:30 a.m. every day, a compilation of all the absences. So compliance in this particular case looks like notification before 8 a.m. and a medical certificate on day 1. if it is a sick leave request. Right. If you're a shift worker, as I said, you must notify before your shift starts, as early as possible in the day when you know you're going to be absent. So if you're going to be on shift from 6 p.m., but you know that you're sick or you know that you're going to be absent that day, you must report your absence as early as possible. The manager must immediately notify HR when they are notified of this, although the responsibility of employees is to notify both HR and the manager. And then HR must ensure real-time reporting whenever they hear about this. Non-compliance looks like late notification, which will lead to unpaid leave plus one occurrence against the record. So what's the escalation matrix when people seem to be racking up multiples of occurrences against their record? So things like job abandonment is immediate escalation. As soon as there's a realization that someone hasn't come to work for 4 or 5 days or more, this must be immediately escalated. Anyone who has 2+ occurrence in a 30-day period must be escalated to EXCO. Anyone who racks up 8 occurrences in an 12-month time frame must be escalated. The manager who is non-compliant on any of the issues that they're supposed to do must be escalated. And finally, where HR is non-compliant to the things that they should do, there must be immediate escalation. And this table in front of you sets out what action is required, who's the responsible party who must escalate this, and to whom they must escalate it to. What are EXCO's discretionary powers? EXCO is the only one that has the discretionary powers to vary any of these things. In this case, they serve as the judiciary of the organization, and they exercise the power to have discretion, but against very informed circumstances that still allow company to still comply with the policy. So EXCO discretion applies to retrospective annual leave. Only EXCO can approve retrospective annual leave. Policy exemptions like unusual circumstances, complex cases, and appeal resolutions. The application process for EXCO to exercise their discretionary powers should be a formal letter or a formal appeal. They must document the full circumstances and policy references. They must have an HR recommendation around this, and then EXCO will make a decision and relay it in writing, either approving or denying the escalation. There must be good records kept in all cases. All decisions must be documented. No manager or HR is allowed to exercise the discretion that EXCO is allowed to exercise. All EXCO approvals will be in writing, and they will also align with the labor law requirements. Some of the KPIs that we'll be tracking in relation to this time and attendance policy are things like attendance accuracy at 98%, reporting timelines at 100%, manager validation at 95%, leave processing at less than 48 hours, and medical certificates at 90% plus. Some common scenarios that might happen in applying a policy like this is that an employee might call in at 8:15. They will then incur an unpaid leave and one occurrence because they've notified after 8 a.m. Another scenario could be the manager validates timesheets at 7 p.m. The manager gets a one occurrence because they've validated after the 6 p.m. deadline. Employees providing medical certificates on day 2. This will convert into an unauthorized absence plus one occurrence because they were required to supply the certificate on day 1. And finally, HR delivers the report at 9:45. HR gets one occurrence because the report was supposed to be delivered after the 9:30 a.m. deadline. So there's a number of checklists that we're going to use in the implementation of this policy, and those will be in the hands of HR and the SOP manual as presented in front of you. If you have any questions about this training, please don't hesitate to let me know. and to get clarification. Now go ahead and read the detailed policy which follows this training. Thank you.